set and ready to go now. So welcome to Tricks of the Ashtray channel. Today is the 23rd of September 2018, and on today's video we're continuing with the myth of whiteness, part number 16. Now this particular video is centered about putting the idea of white supremacy intelligence on the pedestal and seeing if it's going to stand up to the test. By now you should know that the word white is not in reference to any color, because white is an absence of all color. That's why you begin a background painting with a white background, because it's an absence of all color. White in reference to human beings is from the Latin word albus, which means a lack of melanin, and that is one of the subjects that we're going to put on today's video. And if you have hidden all warning before you watch this video, I want you guys to understand one thing. When we talk about white supremacy, a lot of people, especially if you're white, that means anybody who has straight hair, irrespective of what your color, the color of your skin looks like. A lot of people listening to these videos sometimes find it very uncomfortable. They might think that the videos that we're making, it's a personal attack on you. And I want you guys to understand something. If you're white, that means anybody that has straight hair, because scientifically that's what it means, that you have albinism. I want you guys to pay very special attention to my words and what I'm about to say. What we're talking about is not a personal attack on anybody, because unknown to people who have straight hair, that means you're an albino, white supremacy is killing white people or anybody who has straight hair first the most. The Vatican makes us believe that white supremacy is targeting blacks, but I want you to understand this concept. I want you to think very, very clearly. I'm going to give you a special example of what I'm saying right now. White supremacy is a gun, all right? And when you aim a gun at someone, you have to put a bullet inside that gun first. When the gun gets fired, the bullet has to be destroyed first before it reaches its target. When the bullet reaches its target, the target may survive. He may duck, she may duck, and you might miss it, but the bullet is destroyed. White supremacy is a gun. The bullets are the people used to fire that gun. That means if you label yourself white, you are the bullet for that gun. You're going to get destroyed first before you were used to destroy a black person. So a lot of people will think that, blacks are the ones who die first in the system of white supremacy, but it's not the case. It's white people or anybody who has straight hair that gets to die first. The blacks will still survive. Why is that the case? Because albinism came from blacks. The lesser is included in the greater. The lesser cannot kill the greater. So it's a futile attempt. So when you're listening to our videos, I want you to understand that white supremacy destroys white people first, or albinos, before it destroys blacks. And I want you guys to understand this, that white supremacy, because we use the name white supremacy, it doesn't mean that black people are, innocent of white supremacy. White supremacy is a word in which is a system which can be practiced by anybody, irrespective of their ethnicity. So it doesn't matter if you're black or you're white, you can practice white supremacy because you have to understand this. The reason why supremacy has been so successful is not been successful because it has so much strength. It's not so successful because it has so much intelligence, which we're going to put under scrutiny today. It's been successful because black people have made it successful. Because you have to understand that 4/5 of the world's population is black with woolly hair, and 1/5 of it is made of people who have straight hair, or albinos as we call them, which is now called white. The 4/5 have made it possible for white supremacy to succeed, directly or indirectly, because black people love it. And that's why it's been so successful. So if you're black, I don't want you to think that you're absolved from white supremacy because you're practicing it in one way or the other. And the practice of white supremacy means as long as anything you do is for the benefit of the white supremacist master, which reside in the Vatican, then all is well. You have to understand that. If you look at all the white establishments, organizations around the world, you find black people inside there. And they are the real brains, as we're going to show and prove today. So with that, let's get into this conversation, and let me tell you how it all started, that we have to end up on the myth of white supremacy, part number 16. Before I get into explaining how we have arrived at the myth of whiteness, part number 16, I hope that everybody out there who's white understands the words that I just said before they start watching this video, because I want you guys to understand that the leaders, the people running this world through the Vatican, who label themselves whites, who are actually the great grandsons of Genghis Khan, do not actually care about you. The white population is just a cannon fodder for them to stay in power and succeed. So I want you to understand that very, very clearly, because the white population, or the albinic population around the world, are the bullets that's making white supremacy to succeed, in that the guns are always locked and loaded and always firing. And like we've explained before, black people will survive through this. They may duck it, but it will destroy the albinic population first before it gets to the black population. So I hope you guys have understand that. If you've understood that so far, then we can continue on and start talking about how we arrived at the myth of white supremacy, part number 16. So a lot of people believe that the world that we live in today is a world that is based on law and order, because the albino supremacists actually make us believe that the world is organized in such a way that there is law, order, and justice in everything. And all around the world, a lot of black people who've been brainwashed, as well as their albino counterparts, actually believe there is law, order, and justice in this world. There's no such thing. What we have is an organized criminal enterprise led by the albino supremacists in the Vatican. There is no law, there is no order, there's no justice. So if you think that when you walk into an institution or organization that's been touted as being a justice department, that you're actually going to get justice, you are being fooled, because it's a criminal enterprise that's running and organizing the world. And if you've watched a lot of gangster movies, you would have noticed that the criminals live like things being organized. They like flamboyancy. And that's what is running our world, under the camouflage that it's organized law, justice for all of us. So what we're looking at, like we're saying,
like I was saying earlier before, if you watch the intro to this particular video, that black people are the ones making white supremacy to be so successful. They are the intelligence behind it, and we're going to show you with proof and facts, so it doesn't just look like hearsay. Because there's so much science that's involved into intelligence, which a lot of people don't know. So that means you have to be built for it. If you're not built for it, there is no way that you can reach that level of intelligence that the albino supremacists claim that they have. So what you're looking at on the screen now here is a particular video during the campaign trail before Donald Trump got into office, in which Hillary Clinton was running. Now, a lot of people did notice something very particular about this particular campaign in which Hillary Clinton was running for president. Now, the reason why we noticed this was because Hillary Clinton was sickly, all right? And so because she was sickly, a lot of like service personnel came to the forefront in trying to cover up that sickness, because she's a stooge of the albino supremacists that's running our world. And if not for the sickness, we would not have known the people who are the intelligence behind white supremacy, because like we've said before, that black people make white supremacy possible. There are the brains and the intelligence behind it, but they are hidden in the background, and they're doing so much evil and heaping so much evil by providing the intelligence to make white supremacy successful, or albino supremacy as we call it today. So I'm going to play this short clip, and what you're going to see is that the man who's taking care of Hillary Clinton during the campaign trail because she was sick was a black man. He was directing traffic and trying to make sure that Hillary Clinton was okay. Now, the question now has to arise. What is a black man doing helping a white supremacist to heap more misery on its people and the world at large? That's a very good question, because today we're trying to show you with proof that we're going to show you with facts, that the so-called intelligence of white supremacy is actually run on black people's intelligence. So let's play this clip, then we'll come back and continue to talk some more.
They're talking about this man. You're about to see him highlighted on your screen momentarily. On the far left of your screen. He's in the background on the left-hand side of your screen. He is called the Mystery Man. He's the mystery handler, actually. We don't dabble in conspiracy theories on this program, but we ask this question. Who is he?
Yeah, the earpiece is usually a dead giveaway, but a lot of staffers, Stuart, as well, staff people not in a law enforcement role, wear that squiggly earpiece as well. But he's most likely a supervisory agent with the Secret Service, who is what we would call kind of like a body man.
New footage shows Hillary Clinton's mysterious handler emerging from a tent with Hillary moments before she went on stage in Ohio and had a 4-minute coughing fit. Since he appeared to calm Hillary when she was confronted by protesters, everyone has been asking, who is this guy?
You okay? Keep talking. You okay? Keep talking. You handle it. We're not going anywhere.
Okay, here we are.
Keep talking.
Okay, we'll keep talking.
Wasn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Keep talking. Keep talking.
That controversy went viral. The Clinton campaign claimed he was a Secret Service agent. But experts have commented that a Secret Service agent would not physically touch Hillary unless her life was in imminent danger.
But he seems to be playing a very personal role. He appears when she seems to be in trouble, either with the coughing or with some health issue, or in that case, her own personal reaction to what was a heckler at that point. So it's troubling because you've got a man who's also doing something that the Secret Service wouldn't do. He's very physical with her.
Yeah, touching.
He touches her. He has his arm around her. You saw what the Secret Service there in that clip are doing on the side. They stand next to her. No one went up to touch her, and that's what he seems to always be doing.
Why was he initially pictured wearing non-Secret Service casual attire, yet subsequently appeared to be in command over the other Secret Service agents?
So a lot of people would have watched that particular clip, and they think that that's just a one-off, instance that showing a black man controlling the intelligence and controlling an albino or white person in Hillary Clinton, as they call him today. But you have to understand this. But first of all, let's just take this thing into the thought and think about it logically. If the term white as an ethnicity, because there's no such thing as race, started existing, because you have to understand that being called white, that means anybody having straight hair as an ethnicity, started being designated an ethnicity from the 1200s by the time of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan brought all this together. And you have to understand that before that, being albinic was not considered an ethnicity. You were just a member of the community that you were, which was largely black. As if you would go to such places, and in so many black communities around the world, if you go, you find out that there are people who have albinic skin, which black people give birth to, but they are not looked upon differently from anybody else as a different ethnicity. They are just considered as one of the clan or village or city that that person is from. But being classified as an ethnicity in the modern era started in the 1200s. So that means blacks have always existed, and the intelligence that they have always been around, which means that everything that you see today is based on black intelligence. But the albino supremacists in the Vatican, the great-grandsons of Genghis Khan, have made sure that, these black people are relegated to the background. And when such instances like this come up, you start seeing that the brains behind, the program of white supremacy is actually black intelligence. And there's something you also have to understand. A lot of the knowledge that the albino supremacists are using to run the world today all came from black people. And most of them got this knowledge from the devil, from Satan himself. If you read and study your Bible, you would notice that a lot of the people who were demonically influenced, having familiar spirits, speaking with devils and demons, were all blacks. So that means in the secret, mystery rooms and Freemasonic rooms, the mediums that are actually used to communicate with so much of the demons around the world and Satan himself are actually black, because the demons possess black people. Just like when Yehoshua was trying to cast a demon out, he was casting it out from a black person, because throughout history, all those people were black. But we're going to show you the biological evidence that it's impossible for anybody who's an albino scientist to have discovered the so many things that which we base, in quote, white supremacist intelligence on today. It's technically impossible. But stick with us, and we're going to show you with facts and still narrate this story so you understand how we ended up here. To start with, there are so many things that we're taught, that makes us to deny our humanity. Because you have to understand that prior to, let's say, 1492, there was no such thing as considered to be race. Race is a totally new concept, because what we had was ethnicities. And today we are so confused that about the subject of race, that you hear people say such words as they're mixed with, black, they're mixed with Irish, they're mixed with whatsoever, ethnicity they want to call out, as if, they can separate their mixed or, half parts that they say that they're mixed with. Because a lot of people will say, I'm half Spanish, I'm half Italian, I'm half black, I'm half white, and I'm half Irish, I'm mixed with so and so forth. You have to understand that you cannot separate your mixed parts or your mixed ethnicities that you think that you're from, because in all honesty, anything that's mixed ought to be able to be separated. So for example, if you have, iron ore mixed with copper, you should be able to separate the iron from the copper in some sort of solution. And let me just show you guys that. So it says here, can copper be mixed with iron, be separated? I asked a question on the internet. It says the two elements iron and copper can be separated by solvent extraction. The actual separation of the metals is made visible with specific detection reactions. D. Experimental activity. The students will separate a mixture of iron and copper dissolved in hydrochloric acid. So if you say you're mixed, like a lot of people have been so confused about their humanity to say, you should be able to separate your ethnic parts. But can you really do that? Obviously you can't. So the whole idea of making people so much confused about, ethnicity and bringing the subject of race, which has never existed before, was so that the great-grandsons of Genghis Khan could always trace their lineages, back to Genghis Khan, who started making albinism to be an ethnicity when it had never existed before. And in all honest truth and honesty, when you say in the modern era that you're mixed with Irish, Italian, black, and all those kind of European ethnicities that a lot of people claim today, a lot of people don't understand that all those ethnicities were all black people. The Irish were black. The Italians were black. The Swedes were black. The Germans were black. The Russians were black. Everybody that you see today that goes by that name, Italian, in today's modern day, in the year 2018, that they say they're either Italian, they're Spanish, they're Russian, they're German, are actually Asians. They are none of those ethnicities because those ethnicities were bred out. Case in point, the best way I can put it is this. For example, the people living in Egypt cannot say they're Egyptians, even though they bear the name Egyptians today. Because when you go through history and see the people who were called Egyptians, they do not look like the present day, modern day people living in Egypt. So it's the same, confusion of history that a lot of people go by. So the people today who say that they are, they're European in whatever form, you're English, you're Irish, you're German, you're Swedish, you're Italian, you're Spanish, you're Portuguese, you're Russian, are actually all Asians. They are just living in that vicinity or the areas of which those black people lived about, let's say, at the most 300 or 400 years ago, which is not that long. So there's a lot of confusion that the great-grandsons of Genghis Khan had brought upon the world in trying to maintain an Albanic population as an ethnicity which had never existed before. It's making a whole lot of people very, very confused. So how did we arrive at, the Myth of Whiteness part number 16 that we're on today? Well, there's one time that, some team members were going through our emails. And there's this particular email that they opened up. And so they called me and told me, look, Harris, we think this one is for you. And I asked them, okay, what's so special about the email? Because I was busy doing other stuff. And they said, you just need to read it. So I decided to take a look at the email because I have access to it. And the email was addressed by a certain person to me who actually told or said that he was Nigerian. And he said that on the so many videos that we make, which I happen to be the narrator on those videos, that I am actually always sounding very, very angry on those videos. That's what he told me. So that I should try as much as possible not to sound so angry on the videos, and I should be chill and calmer on the videos. So in his own opinion, so I can get the message across to people so it doesn't just sound like I'm always angry. And I was surprised, and I was like, so here we go again. So why was this email so particular? The email is particular in the sense that in today's world, we are taught not to be expressive of our human nature. We are not taught to be expressive, so that means you must be politically correct at any point in time. In places like the United States of America, let's say that someone made you angry and you shouted at the top of your voice. There are laws that can get you arrested for disturbing the peace of a place. So that is a clampdown on humans expressing their nature. So that means you ought not to be angry and shout at the top of your voice for something that someone has done to you. Now, what you'll notice in particular, pay attention to, is the fact that because of this clampdown on expressions, on human expression, you find out, this is something that's very, very noticeable in the United States of America and in the world at large. You find out that if you make a black person angry, all right, that black person is going to express that you've made him angry. He or she is not going to hide it. because black people are naturally very, very, expressive in the way they feel. So if you make a black person angry, he's going to tell you to his face, or tell you to your face rather, that you've made him angry. You shouldn't come around him, You shouldn't come near him. He's going to make you know that verbally, one way or the other, and you're going to know, okay, I have to avoid this person because I've made him angry. He doesn't want me around him. If you make someone who's not black, that means if that person has straight hair, all right, or as an albino, as we call it at this point in time, if you watch the Myth of Whiteness series, you find out that when you make somebody angry who's not black with woolly hair, they usually do not express their feelings to you. If you were to ask them, is everything okay? They'll tell you it's okay. And you'll actually believe that it's okay when it's not. Because their actions later on is going to make you know that it wasn't okay. And it's going to take you aback, and you're going to be shocked by the person's actions because he never expressed that he was angry at you. He did not show it. And when you asked him, he said it was okay. Why is that the case? Why is it that 90% of the time when you make a black person angry, that he's going to express his feelings and is not going to try to be politically correct at any point in time when he's angry? He's going to show you, he's going to tell you that you've made him angry. But if you make somebody that's not black, who's white, or anybody with straight hair, or the general term, which is an albino, angry, 90% of the time, they are not going to show or express that anger. They're rather just going to tell you that it's okay. Why is that the case? The case here boils down to two things. Top on that list is that people who are not black, all right, are deficient in melanin, because the word white comes from the Latin word albus, which means a lack of melanin. So that melanin, all right, which we have been taught to despise throughout all our lives, is very, very important in expression, because we've been told, when you hear the word melanin, what comes to your mind is that it's just responsible for skin color. But that's not true, because we're going to show you what melanin truly is. Since albinos lack melanin, and that melanin is in the brain and central nervous system, it causes people not to be able to express their feelings in the utmost way that they can. And they express it differently because the central nervous system is not working the way it's supposed to be. That's one of the main reasons. Another reason is because in today's society, we are taught to be politically correct. And since we're taught to be politically correct, you don't want to do anything or express your humanity in such a way that it harms one person or the other. So, what we're going to take a look right now is show you how important melanin is and what melanin truly is, so you can understand this story better on why is it that in 90% of cases, if someone who's an albino, that means that person has straight hair, gets angry, they are not able to express that anger, but rather will be politically correct to tell you it's okay, when in all truth and honesty, they are not feeling that way. And why is it that in 90% of cases, when you make a black person angry, he's going to express it and show you there and then, so you're not confused about his actions, so you know that he or she is angry and mad at you. So let's find out what is melanin. So the question now is, what is melanin? When a black person is able to hear a song and start dancing without having been taught how to dance to that song, and the energy is crispier and not slow, like when an albino or white person or anybody with straight hair dances, what's responsible for that is melanin. Melanin is responsible for the central nervous control and muscle coordination in your body. So when black people are able to move better and do certain things better, the reason for that is melanin. Melanin is responsible for making black people have more muscle mass, is responsible for making black people to age slower, is responsible for making black women to be more curvier, and the shape and the way they are, everything that's going on that's making black people the way they are, even though they are the most despised people in the world, is because of melanin. But you should understand that we've never heard of melanin before. It seems like a new thing all of a sudden because if you, a couple of years back, let's say maybe 10 years back, 15 years back, we've never heard of the word melanin. So where did it come from? So what is melanin? If it's responsible for all these beautiful things that black people have, that a lot of other people, a lot of, albinos or anybody with straight hair will be envious of. So, for example, black people make the best athletes in the world. It doesn't matter any sports that you can put them in, they're going to be the best athletes in the world. And the only reason why most sports you will not see black people performing is because the albino elite, the people in the Vatican, have made sure that certain sports are difficult for black people to get to. So it doesn't show that black people are the superior athletes. Such sports as maybe golf, for example. Tiger Woods, who's definitely black but doesn't consider himself to be so, would have been the greatest golfer of all time. But when the albino elite found out that that was going to show and that a black man was going to climb on top of the pedestal to be the greatest golfer of all time, they ran Tiger Woods into the ground. So Tiger Woods, for example, started having problems in 2013. So many women came up and, they tarnished his image. And after that, Tiger Woods couldn't win a game for 5 years. He just recently won a game on the 23rd of September 2018 and is almost like 4 titles away from tying Jack Nicklaus, the greatest golfer of all time, who was an albino white female being portrayed to us as a man. So melanin is responsible for everything. But what is melanin? When a black female is able to have a very nice figure and who's lean with a butt, what's responsible for that? It's melanin. When, black people, for example, can, jump higher in so many things and do so many things naturally without being taught. Black people are able to do so many things naturally. They just have that inherent knowledge about doing so many things without being taught, never been in school, never seen it before, but they just know how to do it. What's responsible for that is melanin. All right. So the albino elite know that melanin is responsible for so many things, but they did not realize this. When Genghis Khan started labeling, albinism as an ethnicity, the devil, Satan himself, never told him that you're not going to be, you're not going to be able to succeed for a very long time because you lack melanin. That's what the devil does. He uses people to do his work. And now the albino elite have just found out that melanin is very, very important for human success and human life. And that's the reason why a lot of albino people all around the world, anybody with straight hair, are not living the best lives. They are sickly, they are pale, paler every generation. They have fertility problems, so on and so forth. And they're just getting to realize that over the past couple of decades. And now they are running, helter-skelter trying to find results. And the devil never told them because he's using them to make sure that he runs the world and controls the whole world population before his end comes. So melanin is responsible for so many things. And the albino elite hide it because, especially in sports, because through sports you can actually see the performance of melanin, and they don't want you to know that. So with such sports like, swimming, they make sure that blacks don't compete in it. They make it very, very hard and difficult. And they'll tell you such lies as, that black people have shorter torsos, so they're not very good for swimming, which is actually false. Black people do have shorter torsos naturally, but they have more muscle mass and better density, which means that their endurance levels are going to be higher. They're going to have more strength if they swim, and they'll swim faster. The same thing with such things as tennis. They make it so difficult so that you cannot get into tennis because of sponsorship. They make it very, very difficult for black people to attain that level of success so that we can all keep believing in the myth of white supremacy. So in such games like the UFC, or such sports rather like the UFC, which is a mixed martial arts organization, and such games like such sports like international soccer. Now, in order for the albino, anybody with straight hair people, to compete with black folk, a lot of steroid use is allowed in a lot of sports to give them, a fair competitive advantage against, black folk, because black folk have a lot of melanin. And when it seems like, because you have to understand that the white supremacists have sequestered certain sports such that black people are not always going to win in such games by providing complex rules and refereeing to make sure that the games can be rigged in such a way that black people are not seen as the superior athletes. In such sports like the UFC, for example, someone like John Jones, in the lightweight division, light heavyweight division of the UFC, has been unbeatable for so many years and would be the greatest martial artist, or of all time in the UFC. Now, considering that fact, and because John Jones doesn't look to be one of those sellout, black athletes in that organization, his image has been tarnished so much by saying that he's been using steroids, when in fact everybody in sports uses steroids, and steroids is only made to be illegal once you become a target. So in John Jones' case, his image has been tarnished such that people actually believe that that it's because of the steroids used that's making him a success. But if everybody's using steroids and he's using steroids also, what's the difference right there? Because you have to understand that in all sports steroids are used, but just for the mere fact that John Jones is black and he's going to be the greatest, UFC mixed martial artist of all time, and they can't allow that because that sport is supposed to be a white supremacist sport, in the sense that they want to show you that the machismo of, albinic people, anybody with straight hair, as being the greatest sport athletes in that division. So that's what's going on there in such sports like let's say international soccer. So we talk about international soccer here, we're talking about the World Cup. You find out that most black teams never ever succeed, especially if the teams come from the African continent or just black in general. They never ever win the World Cup. Why is that so? And such people will get sucked into the idea that, black teams are not technical enough to win the World Cup. But that is not the case, because just like every other sport, the steroids are used to make, the albinic teams, anybody with straight hair teams, to have an unfair advantage over black teams. And also, you have to understand that they use referees and complex rules to make sure that we can still believe in the myth of white supremacy when, albinic teams win such games as the World Cup. Because you have to take notice of this. Soccer, or football as they call it, is a game which involves a lot of running. So that means anybody who can outlast you in running, all right, would almost likely win the game. But you find out that in most of this, international soccer competitions, such as the World Cup, the black teams never seem to win. Besides the fact that, besides the fact that steroid use is used, to give the teams which have straight hair an unfair advantage over black teams. They also use referees, right, and complex rules to rig the game against black teams so that we can all keep on believing in the myth of white supremacy. Now, how do we know that these games are rigged and that steroid use is used to give the white teams an unfair advantage over the black teams? Because with the steroid use, they'll check the black teams and make sure they're not using any steroids. If they are, then they get, automatically disqualified from the competition. But the white teams, they're given steroids, so they have this unfair advantage when competing with black folk. Now, black folk naturally, even without steroids, will still be very, very much, stronger than the white teams. But over a period of time, that strength fades because steroid makes you to stay longer, have much more endurance, and last longer for over a longer period of time. So how you know that these games are rigged? Because the games of soccer, especially international soccer, the World Cup, is based on the team that can run the most and outlast the other team so that they can score goals. If you take those team members, the albinic team members who have who have straight hair, and tell them to get on track and field, right? Let's say a 100-meter dash or 200-meter dash with the same black folk that they just won over in a soccer competition. You find out that the black people or the black teams, those black guys who were playing on that soccer competition, will run faster and win the competition in a 100-meter dash against the same soccer players that were, winning them in a football match or soccer match, as we should call it. Why is that the case? Because you have to understand this. For the myth of white supremacy to succeed, all right, especially in games, there has to be complex rules and referees to rig that game. When the competition is very, very simple, such like a 100-meter dash in which there are no complex rules and no referees to referee it, and they say, run right here. You say you're white and you're strong, and you're doing all these great things on the football field. Run right here against this black folk and win. It will never happen because the complex rules and the refereeing allow such competitions, complex competitions such as the UFC and international soccer, to have albinic people or people with straight hair succeed over black people, and also with the steroid use that's allowed, and blacks and steroid use which are checked against blacks mostly in all these competitions, so that we can all keep on believing in the myth of white supremacy. So in any game that white people are going to succeed over black people, the game has to have complex rules and referees, besides the monetary aspect, which is also used to make sure that black people cannot pass through in certain kind of games and sports, and that such games can be won by white people or anybody with straight hair, which is just the term which just means a lack of melanin, that anybody with straight hair can win against black folk. The teams have to have complex rules, referee, and money to bar black athletes from showing that they're superior athletes in every sports, in every division. So that's how it works for us to keep on believing in the myth of white supremacy. So melanin is very, very important in all these successes, of black people all around the world in sports. So we still have to answer that question. What is melanin really? What is it all about? Because that's what we're still trying to talk about, to make you understand that melanin is not just the pigmentation in your skin. It is more than that. It is something totally different, something else. It's not just what provides color for your skin, the blackness in your skin. melanin then? What is melanin? What makes a black person to be able to move the way they move, especially to such things as music and dancing without being taught, and so many other things, having inherent knowledge? Because melanin is responsible for your central nervous control and muscle coordination. And if you do not have that, you become choppy, you become sloppy, and you can't really figure things out. So what is melanin? Let's find out what's melanin. So before we answer the question, what is melanin? I need to make you guys understand that melanin is so important that the white albino elite in the Vatican have a conference about melanin every 3-4 months. It seems like they have a conference about melanin, and they're always trying to get so much information about what it is, like every week or every day. But if you go trying to look at where these conferences are being held, you're not going to find anything, all right, to the fact that there is a melanin conference, because they hide the word melanin under the word pigment. And the one thing that you have to understand is this: melanin is not responsible only for the pigmentation that we have in our skin, because that's what they always want you to focus on. I'll show you some websites to that effect, starting with the United Nations website on how important melanin is, in which they talk about it, but they'll use the guy's word pigmentation or pigment. So a lot of people wouldn't know that the one thing that they're making the whole world despise, the blackness, which gives life to everything, which we're going to talk about in detail down the road, that they're having conferences all over the world about. And meanwhile, they are making people to hate themselves, because the society is training us every day to hate our humanity. If you hate your humanity, how are you going to know about your creator? You also hate him as well. So let's go into some of those websites and take a look, just to show you that these people hold melanin conferences under the guise of pigmentation every single day of our lives, since the time that they came into being the leaders, the so-called fabricated leaders of society, the so-called good guys who are trying to save society, when in all honesty and sincerity, they are trying to kill each and every one of us. So let's find that out. So on this particular website right here, which is the UN website, you could pause the video at any point in time, copy out the link. It says here, much more can be done to raise awareness about the plight of persons with albinism, UN chief. And when they say that in the picture, they show you an African albino, which is a first generation albino person. For more of that information, you have to get a book, because we don't have so much time to explain all that. But I want to read something to you that's going to blow your mind, so you can understand where this is going. It says, on the International Day to raise awareness on albinism, a rare genetic condition that results in the lack of melanin in the body. A lack of melanin. So albinism, right, is caused by a lack of melanin in the body. And we're still going to explain what melanin is, because like I said before, a couple of years back, we never heard the word melanin. Then all of a sudden, this just came out. Now, let me read something particular that we should take notice of on this UN website. It says, albinism is a genetic condition that affects people throughout the world. It says throughout the world, because normally they make you believe that albinism just affects black people, but we are all black. But when we're talking about black people here, in terms of black or West Africans, that's what we're saying. All right. It says, let's keep on reading. It says, regardless of race doesn't exist. It says ethnicity or gender, Mr. Guterres said on Wednesday. So albinism here affects mostly people who have straight hair. They're the real albinos, and not the African albino that they're showing you right here. But that's just what I want to show you on this website. So let's go on to some other websites, which you'll see that they're having conferences, melanin conferences, under the guise of pigmentation conferences. So people don't know that the one thing that they're teaching the world to hate, because you find out in today's world that a lot of people who are black hate being black. They're trying to be white to survive, or albinic, as we should call them. If you go to places like Brazil, Brazil is a country that's predominantly black, but you would never know that, because What you see through the TV, especially during the soccer games and everything, are all albanic people. Where did they come from? Brazil is 70% black, black with woolly hair. But these people are so much marginalized. They are so much made to be on the totem pole in society that all of them are trying to be white. So for now, to get a better job in Brazil, most people what will do, they'll say they'll marry either white people and try to have children with them, so that the children come out with lighter skin, so they have a fair advantage in society to have better jobs and a better life. That's the same thing that happened in Mexico, all right, that turned the whole population into what it is today, which is now pale skin and straight hair. And it's the same thing that's going on in the United States, in which a lot of people, in trying to, have a great life, to have a better status in society, get married to white people or albino people, as we should call it, so the children have a fair advantage in society. This is what's going on around the world. We are being trained to hate our humanity for something that is false, for the myth of white supremacy and its intelligence, as you're going to find out in today's video. So let's go into some of those websites for you guys to see the pigmentation conferences that we're talking about. So here's one of those websites right here. You could pause the video at any point in time, copy out the link. It says, yes, sorry to say, it says, pigment cell, their responses, and the generation of diversity. So a lot of people wouldn't know that it's talking about melanin, because when we say pigment, are we now studying plant pigments? Are plants the pigments that you're studying about? Or what pigment are you studying about? Is it animals? It's human beings. Because when you read down here, it says PASPCR 2016 will celebrate the diversity of pigmentation and pigmentary signs. It's talking about human beings, diversity of pigmentation. Let's go to another website. So here's another website. You could pause the video at any point in time, copy out the link. It says ESPCR 2018, melanocytes, their ecosystem and pathological evolution. If you go reading down here, it says the European Society for Pigment Cell Research. But you can see right here, talked about melanin, right? But here it changes the word to pigment cell research, because they don't want you to understand that these people are constantly studying black people, because the only people who have the melanin that they can talk about and do the research on are black people. Can you see why black people are being killed all over the world now? Does it make sense why the police will just stand and shoot? Why Ebola is going to be in West Africa, or diseases like and water problems like we had in Michigan? Is it Michigan? I'm not sure, but it has to be one of those states in the United States. Can you now understand what's going on? Because let's read here. It says the European Society for Pigment Cell Research is a scientific society dedicated to understanding the biology of the pigment cells, melanocytes, from normal to pathological development. The 24th ESPCR meeting will be hosted in Rennes, the capital of Brittany, in France. It aims at deciphering the biology of the melanocyte and its ecosystem, the better to understand its dysfunction and pathological evolution. You're studying melanocytes. Are you going to be studying the albino melanocytes, which they don't have enough melanin, or you're studying the black one, which have all the melanin that you need? But meanwhile, at the same time, you're saying that white people, all right, albanic people, people with straight hair, are the superior. They're the superior people in the world with superior intelligence, but yet you do not study them, but you study black people. Does that make sense at all to you? All right, let me show you much more of these websites. So here's another website right here. You could pause the video at any point in time, copy out the link. It says International Federation of Pigment Cell Societies. It says welcome to the website of International Federation of Pigment Cell Societies. And look at how many meetings they are having. It says here 2018 Regional Society meeting, ASPCR. Next annual meeting is 9th ASPCR Conference, Colombo, Sri Lanka, from 15th to the 18th of August. Another one says here, next annual meeting is 25th annual meeting is going to be in Rennes, France, from the 24th to the 27th of September 2018. They're having a meeting of melanin every single month, but they hide it under pigmentation. But yet you say that black people are the least intelligent people in the world, but yet you're studying them because you're not going to study an albino, anybody with straight hair, because they don't have any melanin, whether in the skin or in the body. We're going to talk about more of this so you guys understand the science. It says here another meeting here is going to be held in Japan from the 13th to the 14th of October 2018. Another one in USA, United States, in Glenarden Beach from the 17th to the 22nd of October 2018. But you never ever hear any of this meeting. Look at this one was held in Denver, Colorado, in Sheraton Denver Downtown Hotel from August 26th to August 30th, 2000. This is an older meeting, but I'm trying to show you what these people are into. Let me show you some other websites. So this particular website is an older website, but I just wanted to show you the flyers and the people, whatever qualifications they have and their background who go into this kind of meetings. So you could pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link. This one was held in 2016. It says PSPCR Annual Meeting 2016, sorry to say. It says Seeing the Light, Pigment Cells, Their Responses, and Their Generation of Diversity. Studying black people because they're the only people who have enough melanin for you to study. It's not albinos, anybody with straight hair, which they say have the superior intelligence, and you're studying people with far less intelligence. Does that make any sense to you? Yet you're studying people of far less intelligence than black people in trying to understand their melanin, what makes them so special, because it's the melanin that makes them black. The black people are made black by their blackness. So you can see the registration here for this particular meeting. It says students postdoctoral fellows member was $350. I know this is a little bit too small for you, but let me see if I can increase the size of this funds for you guys to see right here. It says here it was early, but it was $350. Late is $450. Let's see who they're talking about. Let's see, rather who are attending the conference, rather, is what I mean to say. Here's keynote speaker. He's a physics and evolutionary developmental genetics of color invertebrates. That is his qualification. His name is Professor Michel C. Milankovic, University of Geneva and Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics. Right? See that? It says physics and evolutionary developmental genetics of color invertebrates. Are you studying animals? Is that what it's saying? Color invertebrates. These people just make me laugh all the time. And here is that's what I'm saying, telling you that black people are the intelligence behind whatsoever's going on in the white world today. White supremacy is powered by black intelligence, subverted by the power of demons and Satan himself. That's what's going on. White supremacy is powered by black intelligence. So stick around. You're going to know more of this later on. This person is actual name is Valerie Harvey. Valerie Harvey she's a medical doctor. Says pigmentary disorders and health disparities affecting persons of color. So they just throw her in here so it looks like she's doing valid work in studying. I mean, what's the need for studying black people if you already know that the melanin makes them black? Why you study them? The study is not for any advancement of black people. It's for the advancement of white supremacy. Because when Genghis Khan started, making people to fall under the category of either albinos or blacks because he wanted to rule the world, he never knew that the melanin content is going to be responsible for that. That with each passing generation, the melanin gets degraded in people of straight hair such that they become weak and feeble. And now that they've found out, because Satan never told them all this, they're running all over the place trying to find solutions. And they've been doing so for a very long time because they just found that out. And we're going to tell you the powers of melanin. But until then, let's just keep showing you these websites because we want to really answer the question, what is melanin, so you can understand it. We're showing you the importance of it first on how these people go about, having conferences of melanin all over the world. Let's look at a few other people who attended this particular conference in 2016. Now, Valerie Harvey here, who's black, as you can see right here, is in the Department of Dermatology. Department of Dermatology, Eastern Virginia Medical School, co-director, Skin of Color Research Institute at Hampton University. Here's another person right here, says pigmentary regeneration and melanoma development in zebrafish. I mean, you've probably heard that word a long time, that they like studying zebrafish to study the color of zebrafish and how they evolved or whatever they want to say about it, and that from that study they are now studying human beings. It's all false. All they study is human beings. If you're trying, it's just common sense. If you're trying to solve a problem for a cat, are you going to go study a dog? Common sense, people. They're not studying zebrafish. They're studying black people. Black people with woolly hair. Let's keep on reading. It says, program, this guy says here he's Craig CO. He has a PhD or whatever, program in molecular medicine, University of Massachusetts Medical Society. Another person writes here, says his name is Todd Ritke. He's a medical doctor, Department of Dermatology, University of Pennsylvania, Perelman School of Medicine. Another person here is David R. Adams, a medical doctor, emerging models of melanin biosynthesis and the spectrum of occulocutaneous albinism. You guys have heard this word before, right? When you study the myth of whiteness, or sorry, when you watch the myth of whiteness from part 1, you hear all these fine, beautiful words that they use to hide the fact that people who have straight hair are all albinos. And here is another person right here. He says, invited speakers, albinism, can it become a treatable disease? A treatable disease. Now, technically, if they're saying albinism is a treatable disease, I want you guys to ask this question. How many black people in Africa, sizable number of black people in Africa, are albinos? Very, very small. So you can understand this is how they lie to you, because they're studying the albinism of everybody who has straight hair, majority in the Western world today, in trying to see if their problems, their lack of melanin, which is causing all their problems that they're having, from fertility to the fact that they can't dance to even inferior intelligence. This sounds like something very strange to you to hear that, but we're going to prove it. We're not just going to say it, so you can understand what's going on. All right, so stick around. So they're trying to say here that can the albinism, is it treatable? And this guy's name is Brian Brooks. He's a medical doctor as well. Here's from the National Eye Institute, National Human Genome Institute, National Institute of Health. Here's another person. Says, in the winter of life, how the aged microenvironment promotes melanoma, metastasis, and therapy resistance. Her name is Ashani Warrentanas. He has a PhD, the Wilster Institute. Another person here is determinants of says that the determinants of melanoma metastasis, use of the RCA system as a discovery tool in melanoma. Sherry Holman she has a PhD from Huntsman Cancer Institute, University of Utah. So this is how these people go about creating, all these conferences all around the world, hiding it because they're studying black people in trying to solve white supremacy, which they say it's superior intelligence. You're studying people of inferior intelligence to solve superior intelligence. All right, let's see if you can find some other websites before we go on. So that was it for the websites trying to show you how important melanin is, because these people, the albinic elite all around the world, are studying it, and they're studying black people who they have referred to as of inferior intelligence, instead of the superior intelligent people in albino people, anybody with straight hair all around the world, to see if they can make them better or use that intelligence to improve the inferior intelligent people in black people. But rather, it's the other way around. They're studying black people trying to improve albinic people. They are studying inferior intelligence trying to improve superior intelligence. Does that make any sense to you? But nevertheless, let's get back to where this conversation started. What is melanin? Because we still haven't answered that question for a lot of people. Maybe they're hearing this word for the very first time. Now, one thing you have to understand, let's say, rather to answer this question, we have to take a look at the human body, all right, to see what the constituents are, to see if this melanin is in there. because I think that's the basic foundation in trying to make you understand what melanin is. So let's go and ask some questions on the internet to see what's the constituent, what's the chemical constituents of the human body or human skeletal structure or human body in general, to see if we can find melanin in it. So we went online and we asked the question, what is the most abundant, element or constituents of the human body? And it led us to this website. So you guys can pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link and go read it up. We said, what is the most abundant element? The most abundant element in the universe, the earth, and the human body. So we went through, we scrolled through this particular website, and it says here the most abundant element in the universe is hydrogen, which makes up about 3/4 of all matter. Helium makes up most of the remaining 25%. Oxygen is the third most abundant element in the universe. All of the other elements are relatively rare. This is all fake information, because this is the information that they want to pass out to the public, so you guys don't actually know what is studying. I mean, everything is cloaked in a lie. As long as you're in the educational system of the world, you'll never find truth. That's why, for me, when somebody starts reading off their qualifications, the more foolish I know you are. I have a certain basic qualification. I've been in a university, a 4-year university, for a certain kind of paper. I hated school all through my life, and there's a reason why I hated it, because it was always full of false information. Because when I asked pertinent questions, these folks couldn't give me an answer. All right. So let's say I rarely made it by, but nevertheless, I have that paper that says you've been in a 4-year university with a certain kind of degree. But for me, like I said, the more somebody starts speaking on your qualifications, the more foolish I know you are. I may not outwardly tell you that, but I'll just say, okay? So now let's keep on reading. Here's the chemical composition of the earth is quite a bit different from that of the universe. The most abundant element in the earth's crust is oxygen, making up 46.6% of the earth's mass. That's not necessarily true, but nevertheless, we want to arrive at an answer to figure out what's in the human body so we can tell you what melanin is. So let's keep on reading. It says, silicon is the second most abundant element, followed by aluminum, iron, calcium, sodium, potassium, magnesium. These 8 elements account for approximately 98.5% of the total mass of the Earth's crust. Of course, the Earth's crust is only the outer portion of the Earth. Future research will tell us about the composition of the mantle and core. Let's keep on reading below. Now, here is the part that you should pay attention to, because we're trying to find out what melanin is, and we're looking at the constituents of the human body. So it says here, the most abundant element in the human body is oxygen, making up about 65% of the weight of each person. Carbon is the second more abundant element, making up 18% of the body. Although you have more hydrogen atoms than any other type of element, the mass of a hydrogen atom is so much less than that of the other elements that is abundance in third at 10% by mass. So those are the constituents or the constituents of the human body chemically, right? But did you guys see any melanin in there? There's no melanin in there. Why is that the case? Why is it that we have oxygen, we have carbon, and we have hydrogen, which are the constituents of life, of everything, and there is no melanin? So where is this beautiful melanin in here? We don't see it. Well, here is the truth. The melanin is carbon. All right? Melanin is carbon. And you're going to understand that in a minute or so. Now, first of all, they tell you melanin is black, right? In order for you to understand this, when you have some sort of injury to your body, your blood comes out red, okay? When that wound starts healing, what color does it turn to? It turns black. Why? Because it's got carbon in there, and the carbon is melanin. Now, why did the white Albanic elite, people of straight hair, decide to change the word from carbon to melanin? Because they figured out sooner or later, if we stick with the word carbon and we make people understand that carbon is the most abundant element in every living organism in this world, people are going to find out sooner or later, all right, that black people have the most carbon in their bodies, which is necessary for all human life. And let me just show you that before we continue on with this conversation. So you could pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link and see that carbon is the most basic element for all life. And we're going to explain that more to you in a minute, a second. Now, reading from this website, it says here, carbon is also the key ingredient for most life on Earth. So every living organism, because you have to understand this, carbon is the constituent for every single thing in life. So for example, when a human being breathes, because we breathe every day, we breathe every second, what do we breathe in? We breathe in oxygen. And what do we give out? We give out carbon dioxide, because we're carbon made elements. That carbon is melanin. So melanin in a human, carbon in a human being is melanin, because melanin is black. All right? We're going to talk about more of that, but stick with us here for a minute. So let's read on here. It says, carbon is also the key ingredient for most life on Earth, the pigment that made the first tattoos, and the basis for technological marvels such as graphene. So carbon is intelligence, right? Melanin is intelligence. Let's keep on reading. Which is a material stronger than steel and more flexible than rubber. Now you have to understand that everything in life is made of carbon. So for example, like I gave you the explanation that your blood, if you have an injury, your blood comes out red. When you start healing, it turns black. When you have blood droplets on the ground, all right, or blood from animals or whatsoever, and you put it in a bowl and you leave it out for a while. After a while, the color changes from red to black. Why is that? Because we are all made of melanin. We are made of carbon. Carbon is melanin. Melanin is carbon. So that's why the blood changes black, because it contains melanin. Every living organism contains this stuff. When you burn something, anything you burn at all, what color does it turn to? It turns black. Why? Because it's carbon based. The crude oil which you get your energy from to drive your cars, what color does it come in? It comes in black. Melanin, carbon. And we talked about the fact that when a human breathes, they breathe out carbon dioxide. So everything around us, the constituent of all life on Earth, is carbon. All right? Now, I want to show you something about, because we've talked about the fact that when you bleed or when you have blood coming out from your body, after a while it turns black. Let's go look at the name for what blood is, all right? So here is that word, hemoglobin. You've probably heard of this word 1,000 times. What does hemoglobin mean? Hemoglobin, as you can see right here, is a form of carbon, because you have the word in here, which is melanin. Does it make sense why these guys changed the word from carbon to melanin? And a lot of people get confused and don't know that it's the same thing. Now, here's one thing you have to understand when you're trying to catch the albino elite when they're lying to you. They will tell you a story about that one thing does one thing and one thing does the other thing. Or let's say they tell you that this thing does one thing and this does the same thing, all right? But they give it different names. So for example, they could tell you stories like, iron is different from copper, but they do the same thing in the fact that you can use copper and iron to build something, all right? So how you catch them in a lie is this. You have to ask them this question. If these two things you say are different, why are they doing the same thing? Why do they have the same look and same texture? Because they'll tell you that carbon is different from melanin, but why are they all black in pigmentation? Black. So that's how you catch these guys in a lie. You have to ask them the question, if these two things are different, why are they doing the same thing? And when you ask that question, they start rambling all over into long sentences, sorry to say, complex words, and they throw out some math, and they fool you, and you believe that's intelligence. Here's one thing you guys have to know about intelligence, all right? Because somebody speaks quickly, I can speak quickly if I want to. It doesn't make you intelligent. Because somebody walks faster than you and you're a little bit sluggish in your pace does not make that person more intelligent than you. Because somebody speaks with very complex sounding words and long sentences doesn't make that person more intelligent than you. Because someone looks intelligent doesn't make that person more intelligent than you. Because somebody has told you all your life that you're not intelligent does not make you to be unintelligent. Because someone claims that they are intelligent, it doesn't make them so. Those are the myths of intelligence that you have to throw out if you're trying to understand stuff. Walking fast, talking fast, big words, complex sounding words, mathematics doesn't make you intelligent. It makes you very, very unintelligent, because those are all the myths of intelligence that we've come to believe. Let's keep on explaining what this beautiful word of melanin, which has been carbon rather, which has been turned into melanin in human beings is, and see how do we get melanin. This is one of the questions that we're going to try to answer on this particular video. How do we get the melanin into our bodies? So let's start with that. Before I talk about how we get melanin, or where it comes from, the carbon that we have in our bodies, which is termed melanin, I just want to show you guys how these guys lie about everything, because they don't really know what carbon is, but they know it's a constituent of everything in life. Everything that's alive in this world, or anything that you use in this world, is all carbon based. That's just fact. Everything that you use, whether organic or inorganic, living or not living, is all carbon based. Because like I said before, when you burn anything, it turns black. What you have is the leftover constituent of what made that thing what it is, which is the carbon, right? Now, on the website right here, we're looking at the chemical, or let's say the chemical configuration for carbon. As you can see, he says carbon, from Latin carbo, coal, is a chemical element with symbol C and atomic number 6, a Vatican code of numbers right there, because they don't fully know what it is. All what they understand is that this thing feels all life. It feels everything that's in this world. This with electricity, because you have to understand this. As human beings, we're made of chemical constituents and electricity. And you have to understand that the best chemical conductor in the world is graphite. And what is graphite made from? It's carbon based. Go ask that question or look around. The best conductor of electricity is graphite. And graphite is carbon. As you're looking at this picture right here, here's a picture of, or what carbon looks like, right? I'm going to show you what a picture of graphite looks like, because the only difference between the two is that graphite is softer, because that's what you use in making stuff like pencils. Let me show you the pictures of graphite. Here's a picture of graphite right here, and as you can see, is the same thing with this picture right here. There's no difference. This one is just harder. That means it would contain less moisture, and graphite has more moisture. It's that simple. Graphite is the best conductor of electricity. So like I said, human beings are composed of what makes us is electricity and the chemical constituent that we're made of. And electricity is very, very important. And the best conductor of electricity is graphite. And graphite is made of carbon. And the human being with the most carbon, which would make the best conductor of electricity, all right, are human beings. So you have to understand that your impulses. So for example, if you're a human being, if you want to lift your arms up, you do not think about lifting your arms up. You just do. And it is so quick and instantaneous that it can't even be measured. The only thing that acts that way in which you can get instant results, like you flip a switch, is electricity. So we are all human beings made of electricity. It's electricity that powers us. And we've talked about how electricity is created before on the series. If you get on the channel and look for the video that's called let me make sure I get the name right for that video. The video is called The Heart, the Blood, and the Train Broadcasting Network, in which we talked about how the human body creates electricity. So let's get back into what I was trying to say before. So the human being is made of electricity and chemicals. And you see how this is very, very important with melanin later on. And we talked about the fact that graphite is the best conductor of electricity. All right. And so the human being with the most graphite, or the most, sorry to say, most carbon, because graphite is made from carbon and carbon is melanin. The human being with the most carbon, or melanin as we should say, are black people with woolly hair. So let's read how important electricity is in a body from this particular website. You could pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link, and you can read up on it by yourself. It says here, without electricity, you wouldn't be reading this article right now. And it's not because your computer wouldn't work, it's because your brain wouldn't work. So everything about the human body is dependent on electricity. So let's keep on reading. It says, everything we do is controlled and enabled by electric signals running through our bodies. Everything that we do is controlled and enabled by electric signals running through our body. So does it make sense why black people can move the way they are? They can dance better. They are better at sports. They're better in everything. Better even in intelligence, as we are going to prove to you on this video. It's because they have more carbon. They have more melanin, which makes you to have better control over your impulses and quickly, such that the movement that black people do are crisp, not choppy, not slow, not sluggish, but very, very rapid. And it flows because the electrical impulses, which is dependent on the melanin, the carbon inside their bodies, they have so much of it, makes those impulses to flow better. How can this be inferior people with intelligence? So let's get into all this and make you see, because I'm making you see right here that the more melanin you have, the more control you have over those impulses. Let me read something to you. So at this particular website, we want to study and make you see why graphite is a very good conductor of electricity, which is carbon-based or melanin-based, as we should say it. So you could pause the video at any point in time, copy out this link. It says, why is graphite a good conductor of electricity? It says, graphite is a good conductor of electricity because its electrons are delocalized or free to move around. So that means in a human body, okay, let's just keep reading this first so we can finish it off and then explain it better. It says, let's scroll into the website. It says, because graphite is such a good conductor, it is used in electrical cells. Electrical cells. Your batteries are graphite based. Let's keep on reading. It is also found in motor oil and pencils. Because graphite is soft, it is combined with clay and baked and hardened before being inserted into wood for pencils. Graphite is made up of bonded carbon atoms, melanin atoms. Because we've just shown you that carbon is melanin. So the more melanin, the more carbon you have in your body, the faster your impulses can travel. Because now you've made yourself a better conductor of electricity, which human beings are. Because everything in the human body is based on electricity. We've talked about it in so many other videos. Some of those short pictorial videos, which a lot of people don't like watching, because they're only here for transgenders. And like we said, when we find out that you're just here for transgenders, you're probably gonna get spammed or blocked, because we're not here for that. We just do that so that you guys can understand and see clearly that there is evil in our world and the people perpetuating it. Okay? So let's get back to what we're saying here. The more carbon you have, the better conductor of electricity you have. The more your impulses can travel in your body, the more you can figure out things inherently without being taught. So let's read something else to show you how that melanin is responsible for so many things in your body. Then we're going to ask the question, how do we get this melanin inside our bodies? Or where does this story start, that some people have more melanin and some others don't? Okay, so let's go there. So before I read this particular article, I have to make you guys understand something. When you hear the word melanin, you've probably heard of the word melatonin as well. And the stories about melatonin is that melatonin causes us to have, sleep. If you don't have enough melatonin, then you can't sleep. You're going to have insomnia and other stuff like that. Now, what I want you to get from this is this. When you have melanin inside the body, okay, they give it a different name. And that name can come from neuromelanin. They say it's going to be inside the central nervous system, or melatonin, which comes from your pineal gland in your brain. So what you have to understand is that when you hear the word melatonin, you can even, from the word itself, melatonin, you can know it's talking about melanin, because the only difference there is that they add the letters TO and turn it from melanin to melatonin. You're talking about melanin. When you hear such things as pheomelanin, they're still talking about melanin. When you hear such words as eumelanin, it's still talking about melanin. So because everything, like we've shown before, in living organisms and human bodies, right, is made from melanin. And we're going to talk about how we get that melanin. So you could pause the video, sorry, and copy out this link. This particular link is going to be confusing, because it's going to tell you there's a difference between melanin and melatonin. There is no difference between melanin and melatonin. The only difference is that one is produced in the skin and the other is produced internally, but they're all the same thing. So you can't say that blood from your skin is different from the blood that's flowing inside your brain. It's the same thing. They're just giving you different names, because the truth is, the white albino elites in the Vatican want you to be confused about so many things, so that you don't know that they're talking about the same thing. Because like I've said before, we are trained to hate our humanity, because the devil is trying to train us to hate ourselves. Because once you hate yourself, you can never ever like your creator, because your creator looks like you. Does it make sense? So what I want you to get from this website is how important the melanin is, because like we've said before, carbon is melanin. And the greater carbon that you have, the greater conductor of electricity that you have, the better impulses you have and transmission in your body. That's why black people move the way they move and do things they do. And you can see that in everyday life, because black people discover trends every day. Why is that? The impulses in the brain are working rapidly and quickly. They discover trends in fashion, music, dancing, culture, whatsoever you want to think about. So you have to ask this question. If these people, right, are discovering this every day, if black people can be discovering trends in fashion, music, dance, in everything, would that make them to be less intelligent? How about the people who say they're of superior intelligence? In albinos, anybody with straight hair, do they discover any trends in fashions and culture? I want you to think about and name one trend, culture, fashion that any people who have straight hair have come up with. You can just ask that question and give an answer. Try to think about one. You'll never find any. Why? Because there's a lack of melanin. And melanin, or carbon, is the results, gives you the results rather, of intelligence. because your impulses are firing continually. We're going to show you with proof, so just stick around because we want to read some things for you to understand. But before that, we want to show you how the melanin, the carbon, is very, very responsible for your neural, central nervous system control and coordination. So it says here, right here, melanin is one of the major pigments. Like I've said before, it's not a pigment. It's responsible for pigmentation. So you have to understand that, because the white albino elite in the Vatican want you to concentrate on melanin as a pigmentation. That's why they label those conferences pigmentation conferences. So you guys don't know. So, or you guys rather get the idea always that it's talking about pigmentation when it has nothing. It has the smallest bit to do with pigmentation, and we're gonna show you that in a minute or so. So let's keep on reading. He says, by the way, it says melanin is one of the major. Let me read it right so you guys don't get confused. Melanin is not one of the major pigments found in the human skin, okay, which determines the skin color. It is synthesized by melanocytes, which are located in the skin, eye, ear, hair, and central nervous system of the human body, which is all dependent on electrical impulses. So if you don't have enough carbon, those electrical impulses will not travel very well. You're not going to have muscle coordination. You can coordinate so many things. That's why black people dance better. The central nervous system is working because the electrical impulses are firing well, because they have more carbon, which is responsible for electricity inside their body, which we call melanin, making them to dance better and move better in everything. So let me read something else in here before we continue. It says melatonin, like I told you before, when you hear the word melatonin, it's melanin. The only difference here is that they added this word TO to confuse you, so that you think it's something different. It's the same thing. It's only that this one is inside the body, all right, and not outside of it. So it says melatonin is a neurotransmitter, which is mainly derived from the cells in the gastrointestinal tract. I want you to pay particular attention, because we're trying to show you how we get melanin and why some people can have more, which is black people, and people who have straight hair have less. That's where we're going to right now. So as soon as you understood this, let's go and show you how we get the melanin inside our bodies, or how we produce it rather. Let's do that. So you can pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link and go read up on it, because we've laid the basic foundation and we're trying to make you understand how we get melanin in our bodies. And later on, we're going to explain how black people are able to get it more. So here is the basis for your understanding of all this. It says the carbon we breathe, the melanin we breathe out. That's what I want you to understand, because we've made you understand that carbon is melanin, one and the same thing. All right. It's only just been confused to us so that we wouldn't know, because they knew that later on, that if people got to find out that we're all carbon based, all right, and that black people have more of the carbon, it will be easy to figure out all these stupid lies that they tell, that black people are of inferior intelligence, when they are indeed of superior intelligence than anybody else, because they have the better quantity of melanin, which is responsible for all your central nervous control and impulses to make you to be able to think. That's why black people are always discovering trends, whether music, fashion, culture, dance, talk, whatever you want to have, they have more flavor, is because they're intelligent. They are more intelligent than people of straight hair who don't have enough melanin and therefore don't have the capacity for intelligence. Because you have to understand this. If you create a computer, all right, a computer that processes, let's say, a quad-core processor, quad-core processing computer with a quad-core processor. A quad-core processor is going to function better than one that's a single core. So the more melanin you have, the better you are. It's just like somebody with one arm cannot do things better, all right, than somebody with 2 arms because you lack an arm. You lack melanin, so you cannot perform better than someone who has more of the melanin. It's common sense. Very common sense. So let's read this out first so you can understand how we get the melanin. And then we get to answering the questions how black people get more of it and what the reasons are. So it says here the carbon we breathe out as carbon dioxide, which is melanin, comes from the carbon in the food we eat. So the basic foundation of getting the melanin into our bodies comes from the food. All right, let's keep on reading. It says the carbohydrates, fat, and proteins we consume and digest are eventually converted by a number of different biochemical pathways in the body to glucose. All right, so the melanin, I want to stop right there because I don't want to read too much so people get confused. The melanin that we get comes from the food, but we all eat the same food. So why is it that black people get more melanin and people with straight hair don't? Why is that the case? It starts with how you digest the food. And why are black people able to be better at the digestion of the food than the people with straight hair? So that's what we're going to answer in the next couple of minutes. But first of all, we want to start, all right, with how the plants, all right, that we eat, from which we get all this melanin and carbon from, process their own food, because that's or rather how they create the food, because as we've read here, the food are made of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And we've talked about before, I think on one of the videos, that protein, all right, or maybe you've heard it before. A human being cannot survive without protein because we are protein-based organisms. So you need to continually digest protein. So we're going to talk about why that is very, very important, because it comes from the plants. Plants get the protein, then animals can store up the protein far much more better than human beings. And then as human beings, we eat both the plant protein and the animal protein for the best quality of protein into our bodies. So let's go to the basic foundation which provides the protein, which are plants. Let's do that. So before we start explaining how we get melanin, there's some few rumors that we have to dispel about melanin. And this is one thing that you've probably heard so many times. One of the first rumors that you've probably heard is that melanin protects us from UV rays, and that people get sunburned when they're outside in the sun way too long. So you have to like cover yourself up with some sort of tanning solution here and there. You have to understand that melanin does not protect us from sun radiation, because no such thing does exist. The sunlight helps you produce melanin. Okay? I want you to remember that very, very clearly. So for example, when people get in the sun, they get darker. Why? Because the sun helps you to produce melanin. It's the same process that goes on with plants. Now, since you guys already know that melanin is carbon, you have to understand that the carbon is in the earth. It's all around us. So for example, when we breathe we're breathing out carbon dioxide, because that's melanin. So the carbon is in the earth. So you have to understand how all things work, because when Yahweh created the heavens and the earth, he told man, the very first statement he said he had given to him all plants, everything that grows as a plant for food. That was at the beginning of creation, before the flood. After the flood, because most of the most of the plants were destroyed, all right, he now gave man the next order in saying that they should eat meat, that means animals, for sustenance, together with the plants for food. So how do plants, because we already know this is basic biology, that we get all the food that we eat from plants. So what helps the plant to make the foods that we eat? And the most important food which we consume is protein. So plants get the carbon from the earth's crusts. The sunlight now helps to manufacture protein using the carbon or the melanin that they get from the earth. So that's how things work. So melanin does not help us or protect us from sunlight. Sunlight helps us to produce melanin, just like plants use sunlight to create protein from the melanin or carbon that they get from the earth's crust. So those are one of the few things that you have to understand about melanin. All right. So before we go any further, you have to understand that the carbon or melanin is responsible for every biological process that happens in our bodies. All right. So everything is responsible for carrying the electricity that we need, which helps us to relay all the impulses that we need across our bodies, to the food, to everything. Melanin is responsible for it. So now that we've answered the question, on how we get the melanin into our bodies, which is from the food that we eat, all right, we now have to ask the question, why are some people deficient in production of melanin? Because melanin is activated in our bodies from the sun. The sunlight is so important. So melanin is responsible for, everything that's going on in the physiological processes that are going on in our body. So for example, right here, I'm going to read from this website. It says here that a pigment is a chemical that has specific color. So remember, like we told you guys before, that the albinic elite that are leading us today have changed the word so that we don't really know what you're talking about when you're talking about it. We are in our brains and our minds, we think they're talking about two different things. But like I said before, when you want to find out that they're lying, you always have to ask them this question: if these things are two different things, why are they doing the same thing? Why is pigment and melanin doing the same thing? So that's how you catch them in a lie. So let me read some stuff here for you guys to take notice of. You could pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link. It says a pigment is a chemical that has a specific color. Biological pigments color our body and its products. So everything around you is made from melanin because everything is carbon based. We've talked about that before, that when you burn something or when your blood clots, it turns black because it's all carbon based. All right. Now it says that, but this isn't their primary function. The pigments often play vital roles in the daily operation of the body. So the best way to throw this out, it says the melanin right here, just throw out the pigments, right, often play vital roles in the daily operation of the body. For example, melanin is a yellow to black pigment in our skin that helps to protect us from sun damage. This is wrong, right? Like I was saying earlier, melanin does not protect us from sun radiation because no such thing does exist. The sunlight helps us to produce more melanin. That's why when you get out in the sun, you get darker. All right, for everybody. Now let me keep on reading. It says rhodopsin, all right, is a purple pigment in our eyes that enables us to see dim light. All right, so you can see how important, melanin is. As you can see here, the word for this color is called rhodopsin. Melanin, because that's when you see that IN right there, that means it's a byproduct of melanin, the carbon in our bodies. It says, we keep on reading, it says hemoglobin is a red pigment that carries oxygen from our lungs to a cell. Hemoglobin, melanin, IN right there stands for melanin. Let's read a little bit more. It says some pigments in our bodies are waste products and appear to have no function, but they do. Others are very important to our well-being and even to our survival. In some cases, health problems can develop if too much pigment collects in the body or if too little is made. This is actually very false, because the white albinic elite, or anybody with straight hair as we call them, right? They always want to tell a story in such a way that it favors white supremacy, or albinic supremacy as we call it. Anybody with straight hair supremacy. So once they find out, all right, that the story is not going to benefit the ideology of white supremacy, which they want everybody to believe as the correct way to go, they're going to throw in a lie. And you're going to see so many lies of that in this particular video, which we'll point out. You'll see such lies as they tell you that because black women have more testosterone, which makes them to have more muscle mass and have a butt, which no other person can achieve except their fat. They'll tell you that too much testosterone causes them to look manly, can cause such problems as they call it cancer. And the same with men as well, because black men have more testosterone, which causes them to have more muscle mass than anybody else. All right, they'll say such things that too much testosterone can cause cancer. This is how they put lies in everything, and we'll show you that in a second or two. But for what I want you to take notice of is that health problems right here, the right way to read this particular statement that you're seeing right here is that health problems can develop if you have too little pigment, too little melanin in your body. In your body, that's what I want you to remember. So since we've covered this, let's get into the point of seeing how, people, since we've understood that we get the melanin from the food we eat, the carbon inside our bodies, the protein that we eat, we want to see and ask the question why some people, all right, can create more melanin, especially black people, and some others cannot. So that's the next question that we're going to ask. And from that point in time, so when asking that question, we have to go to the basis of where all things begins. And all things begins when we are born into this world through a sperm and an egg. And we need to understand what are the basic constituents of sperm and eggs, because a lot of people need to understand this. We've heard the word DNA, we heard the word of genes, we heard the word chromosomes. Those things are all protein, because you have to understand that everything is protein based. That's why we need to eat protein every day or every other day to survive, and we get all the protein from plants and animals after the flood. So that's what you need to understand. DNA does not exist, genes don't exist, chromosomes don't exist, because the only way somebody's born into this world is when a sperm of a father and the eggs of a mom meet and fertilization occurs. And so it's very, very important for you to understand the constituent of eggs. And so that's where we start this particular section of the video at. So let's go. So before we get into talking about how some people tend to create more melanin, and you have to also remember that melanin is dependent on very two important things: the food that you eat and your exposure to sunlight. But even with that, some people cannot create a lot of melanin in their bodies because the protein has been deprecated. Now, to start this conversation, we want to talk about DNA, because a lot of people hear DNA, 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 and DNA doesn't exist, because like we'll show you that in a couple of minutes as well. We've talked about the fact that life starts with the formation of an egg and a sperm coming together. That's DNA right there. And those two basic components, the egg and the sperm, are primarily made of protein. So when you hear the word DNA, genes, it's all protein, because you get the protein from the food that you eat, animal and plant protein. Okay, so let's break the lie of DNA first, so you can see how stupid we've been, how we've been lied to by the great grandsons of Genghis Khan, who call themselves white, who actually are albinos running our world together, because they want to keep us in this state, and they want to trace their lineages back to Genghis Khan, and they want to make us believe and hate our humanity, because all this has been designed by the devil himself. So let's take a look at the constituents of DNA first. So I'm reading from a website here, and this website says DNA and proteins, because DNA is protein. There's no difference. So that's why you have to constantly eat protein. You can't survive without protein, because your whole body is functioning off protein. Your processes, as we'll show you in a minute or so. But let's break down this lie first. Let me see if I can increase the font on this website so we can read it together. All right. Now it says, what is DNA? Now it says DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and is the carrier of genetic information within a cell. I'm not going to read too much into it. You can pause the video at any point in time, copy this link out, and go read up on yourself. But I want to make you notice some things here first. Now, I'm going to skip reading all this down to the 4 different types of nucleotides, which makes up DNA. So I read, it says, there are 4 different types of nucleotides in DNA, and they differ from one another by the type of base that is present. So the 4 nucleotides are adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. All right. Now I'm going to take just one of these base nucleotides and make you and show you some things about it, so you can understand how these people lie, because a lot of people don't know how to read, because they're not reading with common sense. They want to be intelligent instead of being wise. Intelligence is a part of wisdom. Wisdom is all encompassing, because wisdom means that you're not taught certain things, but you just know it naturally. Intelligent means that you have to be taught. You have to gather information to know. And without that, if you're seeking to be intelligent without gathering information, you become very, very dumb. All right. Meanwhile, wisdom means that you're gonna know what to read and what to look for without being taught, because we're created to be wise. We're not created to be intelligent. So let's just take up one of these nucleotides called thymine and break it down for you to see where it comes from. So let's go. So I'm on Wikipedia right now. You can pause the video at any point in time, or just get on your search engine and type out thymine, right? And go read up on it. Now it says here, thymine is one of the 4 nucleobases in the nucleic acid of DNA that are represented by the letters GCAT. The others are adenine, guanine, and cytosine. Now I'm not going to read through everything. I just want you, I want to show you the lie that these people tell you every day. It says thymine was first isolated in 1893. And like I've said before, when you want to start knowing when history was being changed, when the great-grandsons of Genghis Khan started, messing around and changing all the black history, changing humanity, because they are being led by the devil, you always have to look at the year. Any date from 1492 is when all these great discoveries of history was brought about, because the great-grandsons are writing themselves into history because they never existed before. Before, the world was all black, but now they made albinism to be an ethnicity and they call it a race. So let's keep on reading. It says thiamine was first isolated in 1893 by Albrecht Kossel and Albert Newman from calves' thymus glands. So the very thing that they say that our DNA is made of, they discovered in cattle, in the calves. Sorry, they discovered in cattle, in the thymus glands of cows. So how can you say that this is DNA if you discovered DNA in a cow? The DNA of a human being, the thing that makes a human being, that is responsible for making us come out the way we are, all right? With the skin colors or whatever they want to say, because that's all false. You discovered it in a cow. Okay, I'll leave you to make your own conclusion. So let's go back to making you understand that DNA doesn't exist, genes don't exist, everything is protein. Protein. And we'll show you that starting with eggs and the sperm. So stick around. Let's go further. So I'm on a website that says Understanding Genetics. You could pause the video at any point in time, copy out this link. I want to read some few things from this website so you can understand that when we're talking about genetics, DNA, and all the stuff, we're talking about protein. And we've talked about the fact before, but when they say that you have good genetics, in a nutshell, it just means you have good bones, which means adversely you have good protein, because all the bones and everything that's made in our life comes from protein. And remember, protein is carbon-based, melanin-based, all right? And we get a lot, the sunlight helps us to produce more melanin because you're breaking down your proteins more efficiently. Does that make sense? All right, so let's keep reading this. Now, it says here, I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to read some few points because I don't want to waste too much time reading, because I want to get to the crux of the matter really quick. It says, in fact, genes can't really do much on their own. Should I start reading there? Okay, let me start reading from the top. I'll read real quick. It says, this is a great question that gets to the heart of exactly what genes are and what they do. So the question is asking what is a gene, all right, and what they do. Genes are pieces of DNA, of course, but even though DNA is really important, it can't do all the jobs needed to make your body work. Now, they're throwing all sorts of lies in there, all right? But let's keep on reading. We're going to catch them in. It says, in fact, genes can't really do much on their own. Oh, so genes and DNA is responsible for everything, but it can't really do much on its own? What kind of statement is that? If you say something is important and it can't really do much on its own, that means it's not important. It can't get the job done. If you get to a company and you're trying to make and you want the company to maybe let's say, for example, print a book for you, and the company says, we can't really print this book for you, we have to go to some other place and get it done, that means the company can't do it. They have to go to something else that can actually print the book for you. It's that simple. See how we've been confused every day? These people just throwing lies in and out, and we don't, since we're not wise enough, we want to be intelligent instead of being wise, we don't see through it. So let's keep on reading. It says, to get anything done, a cell needs to read its genes, follow their instructions, and make proteins. Make proteins. Let's keep on reading. After they are made, proteins work together to keep your body running. So all the stories that we've read, they've already told you that DNA and genes can't really do much for you. That is the protein. The protein work together to keep your body running. You see that? Let's keep on reading. Proteins have lots of different kinds of jobs. Some make your muscles contract and relax. Others help you think, see, walk, digest the food you eat, etc. So everything in your body is protein-based. Can you see that? So even the genes and the DNA are protein. So how is this genetic information interpreted in our bodies that make us to be efficient in digesting protein, which is melanin, and together with the sunlight helping us to be more efficient digesters of protein? So let's get into all that and start with the basics first. So you understand, all right, how all this ties together. Like we've said before, when a man and a woman are being born into this world, two things happen. A sperm has to meet an egg. That is your DNA. And that DNA is all protein because an egg is made from protein, right? When you eat, when let's say for example, you walk into a store and you buy eggs that you use to make your omelets or whatever you wanted to. You eat them, you boil them, you fry them. You have eggs in so many different ways. What is the basic constituent of an egg? What is the primary thing you get from eggs every day when you eat them? Protein. So what do you think is the basic constituent of the human eggs in a woman? Protein. What about the sperm also? It's made of protein. Let's read that so you can see what we're talking about here. And before I get into all that, I forgot to say one thing. I wanted to read one thing here before we left. This is the very last sentence below. He says, and some proteins help make a pigment called melanin. It's protein. Protein, because it contains melanin. It produces more melanin. So it's more like I talked about before, proteins are made of carbon. Carbon is melanin. When you break that down with the sunlight exposure that you get, you create more carbon. The more carbon that you create in your body from the protein that you digest, the more efficient you are. Does that make sense? All right, let's get into reading all that and showing you what eggs and sperms are made of, that they are all protein. So we want to start with the sperm, and this is common knowledge known all around the world that human semen is very, very high in protein because the sperm is made of protein, and so are the eggs of a woman. So everything, when you hear about the word genes, DNA, chromosomes, it's all talking about protein. Is the basis for all human life, and protein is gotten from carbon, and carbon is melanin, and sunlight helps you to be a more efficient digester of protein to get more melanin. Does that make sense? So let's read this. You can pause the video at any point in time, copy out this link, and go read up on yourself. It says semen composition, protein. Semen contains both albumin, a protein structure, and free amino acids. That's it. It's protein based. And so is the female eggs. Let's go read that up. So I'm reading from this particular website, but if you get on your search engine and try to find out what's the quantity of protein in the female ovary or ovum, you're going to get a whole lot of nonsense, but they are lying, and we're going to show you in a minute or two. So just relax, copy out this link, and go read up on yourself. So it says here in this particular website, the egg cytoplasm contains nutritional reserves in the form of yolk, which is rich in lipids, proteins, and polysaccharides. All these great, beautiful, big words. It's all protein. Protein, protein, protein. Let's read up again. It says, the egg coat is another peculiarity of eggs. It is a specialized form of extracellular matrix consisting largely of glycoprotein. Everything is protein-based. So let's get into reading how human life comes into being so you guys can understand while albinism deprecates that protein so that it makes the body not to store enough information to be able to digest protein which it eats, which it gets the melanin from, which is also activated by sunlight. Does that make sense so far? So let's get into reading that. So you can pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link and read up on your own. It says here, sperm meets egg, protein essential for fertilization discovered. Now, when these guys tell you they're discovering something, you should know they're obviously telling you a lie. It's because their lies are getting too complex. So in order not to be caught, because this is the way these guys start telling you lies. They tell you something completely like unknown. They don't know it. All right? Because at that point in time, the public is not fully awake. When the public starts becoming aware, they'll say, oh, we discovered. Discovered? What did you discover? Everything has always been here. What did you discover? If you walk into some, let's say, an apartment building that maybe is uninhabited, nobody is living in there, in some maybe forest or whatsoever, are you going to say you discovered it? The apartment was there already. Okay, so let's read up on this. Let me blow this up. It says here, interacting proteins on the surface of the sperm and the egg have been discovered by researchers. These are essential to begin mammalian life. That's human life. So that's how they throw in lies there to just throw you off. They say mammalian life so that they can have this broad way of lying through stuff. These proteins which allow the sperm and the egg to recognize one another. See that? Everything is protein based. Protein is got from carbon. Carbon is melanin. And through sunlight, you can activate or digest more of that protein to create more melanin. So what happens in fertilization? An egg meets a sperm. All right? Now, the funny thing is this. When black people are inbreeding, that protein, the egg and the sperm, gets deprecated. So when it gets deprecated, it doesn't store enough information for you to digest more protein efficiently activated by sunlight, because everything is dependent on the sun. Let me read that portion again that I read earlier before, so you remember this always in your mind, that DNA, genes are protein, and that starts with the human egg and sperm. Let me read that part again. I read it again from that particular website. You can pause the video and copy out this link, but I just want to read it one more time before we get into this discussion finally, because there's some few questions we're going to answer today. In fact, genes can't really do much on their own. We already know that, because genes don't exist. If they can't do much on your own, if something can do much on its own, it's not necessary. So genes don't exist. That's why they're telling you in a very sly manner right here, because genes are proteins. Everything is protein, like we've showed you before. The egg and the sperm is protein. To get anything done, a cell needs to read its genes, follow the instructions, and make proteins. So proteins make other proteins, activated by the sun. After they are made, proteins work together to keep your body running. Proteins have lots of different kinds of jobs. Some make your muscles contract and relax. Others help you think, see, walk, digest the food you eat, etc. And some proteins help make a pigment called melanin. How much melanin gets made in your eye determines your eye. So everything in your life is dependent on protein. Okay? The sperm and the egg. So what happens is when human beings inbreed, that means they continually marry their siblings and do not spread out of that genetic pool. The protein, the egg and the sperm, which meet together to form an embryo, gets deprecated. When that deprecation occurs, all right, they don't have enough information to tell the body how to digest much more protein, which contains carbon, which is melanin, and all this gets activated by sunlight. So the more efficient you are in your digestion of protein, all right, to produce carbon that you need to survive on, which is responsible for all the physiological processes in your life, you become weak, you cannot dance, you cannot think properly. It throws everything out of whack. And that is what happens to people who have straight hair. So the question now arises, how can people who are not able to coordinate themselves in such simple thing as dancing, they need to be taught everything. How can they be more intelligent than people who are efficient in digestion of protein to create more carbon and melanin, which is responsible for your physiological process, so you can think? Because you can see right here, it says that proteins help you think, see, walk, digest the food you eat. If you can't do so, how can you be of superior intellect? All right, so let's keep starting this conversation. So the next thing we're going to ask now, or ask is, what makes black people to have light skin and others have darker skin? We want to take this thing all the way from the start to the end to show you that it is impossible for any albino scientist, and which one we're going to take one scientist, one of the most popular ones at the end of this video, called Nikola Tesla, and show you with proof that it's impossible for any albino scientist to have the knowledge that they so much claim that they're using to run this world with. It's not possible because they don't have the processing power for it. It's only black people who have superior intelligence, not just intelligence, wisdom. Because intelligence is a part of wisdom, it's a fraction of wisdom. We're talking about wisdom, the ability to sit down and study and know things without being told, without being taught. That's why black people are able to discover trends every day in culture, fashion, music, everything, dancing, new dance styles every day, because they are functioning well, because they are the superior beings, because they can digest much more protein and get more carbon or melanin from, and get it activated by sunlight, because without sunlight you can't activate all those things. Their bodies are more efficient in the digestion of protein, from which they get the carbon or melanin that we talk about on this video, which makes them to have superior intellect. They've never been inferior. We've just been told so because the white albino elite know that they are inferior. Inferior in everything, as we're going to show by the end of this video. In muscle mass, in carbon or melanin, which is requirement for your impulses so you can move and do things and not be choppy or sluggish. That's what we're going to show you. So let's get into this. So in order to start this question and answer it properly on how and why, black people have different colors and hues, we need to start with a very basic understanding, because I've tried to lay the foundation so far up to this point for you to understand that we are carbon-based individuals, and that carbon in our body is called melanin. All right, and we also explained that carbon is one of the best conductors of electricity. All right, electricity which is required for your impulses in your central nervous system, muscle coordination and control. So the more melanin or the more carbon that you have inside your bodies, the better you are at those impulses being transmitted across everything. So that's what makes black people to be able to dance and move in a certain way, because they are better conductors of impulses of electricity, because they have more melanin content, which a lot of people who have straight hair don't have. When we're talking about melanin here, we're not just talking about the melanin that is responsible for your pigmentation in your skin, which we are going to address now. So in order to understand what we're going to be talking about now, on why black people have some of them have light skin and some have darker skin, we have to start with understanding how melanin is created, how it affects everything in our body, from the foods that we eat, because it's all activated by sunlight. So if you that's why, for example, in so many countries that have very less sunlight, people are moody and sad, and especially people who have straight hair, or what as we call them, albinos, they get suicidal because they're not exposed to enough sunlight. With blacks can perform very, very well under very small sunlight conditions, which we're going to also show you in this particular video, but it's not going to be efficient. You need sunlight a lot for a lot of the physiological processes that go on in your body. So we want to start with that, and we want to start with talking about or reading from how hens or poultry lays eggs, and the effect of sunlight on their melanin. All right, So we were reading from this particular website. You could pause the video at any point in time, copy of this link. And we start with right here where it says sunlight, all right? It's very, very essential. So sunlight is the most important thing that a human or every organism in this world needs. The ancients, people way back in the day, though, the black woolly haired people back in the day all knew this, that the sun was very, very important, that you needed to stay out in the sun long enough for you to be healthy. All right. So that's why Yahweh would make a law that nobody should worship the sun, because a lot of the blacks and ancients knew that the sunlight was life. That's why even in today's Roman Catholic religion from the Vatican, which leads the world, it's the worship of the sun. The sun is very, very important. The more you stay out of it, the more you stay in it, the healthier you become. The less you stay out of it, the sickler and paler we become. So that's why in today's world, in order to control us, to make us dumb and very stupid, we advise not to stay in the sun. We advise to stay in our homes, and that makes us dumber, because without your exposure to the sun, your body cannot function properly to create the melanin that you need much more efficiently. The sunlight activates the melanin. It makes you create the melanin more from the protein that you eat. Does that make sense? Just like, plants require sunlight to create food and live healthy, so do human beings. Don't play with it. Stay out in the sun. The only thing it's going to do is going to dehydrate you. Drink some water, stay out in the sun, and you're going to be healthy. And we're going to show you that with proof and talk about it so you understand what's going on. Now, we read here, it says, in order, sorry about my mouse is a little bit all over the place right now. It says, in order to consistently lay eggs, hens need about 16 hours of daylight and 8 hours of darkness when they are roosting. Once less than 12 hours of daylight is available, egg production slows down considerably, if not ceases completely. Although you might, let me just stop there because I don't want to get you guys confused, because I want you to get the right information. Now let's go skip over and read about the pineal gland. Remember this pineal gland that they say that we all have? Remember that the pineal gland is calcified by fluoride and doesn't help you function correctly. Let's keep on reading. Now, it says, the hen's pineal gland, part of her endocrine system, sits above her midbrain behind the eyes. This gland produces melatonin, which helps regulate sleep and other body functions. Remember, a lot of times when you hear melatonin around in the news and the media, they tell you that it's just responsible, all right, for your sleep. But this is not true. It's responsible for your whole hormonal system. Your whole entire system. Your pineal gland is responsible for it, because that is where the secretion of all hormones comes into the body. And that's all a function of the melanin, the carbon that you have. Melatonin is melanin. Let's keep on reading. It says, as the days lengthen, her pineal gland responds by sending a hormone through her body to her ovary to start producing eggs. As the days shorten, the pineal gland stops sending this hormone, since the gland is light sensitive. That is that. Let me show you how important, sunlight is to the melatonin levels in black people. Let's keep on reading, and let's go to another website now. So the book I'm going to be reading from is a book called Melatonin from Molecules to Therapy. It was doing some sort of, scientific research on the fact that because this is not, I think this is something that's been happening constantly over the years. Black people tend to stay away from the sunlight much more than people who have albinic skin. All right, today that means you have straight hair, and they notice that even with this, that black people were still secreting more melanin through their pineal glands. And that's just what I want to read to you so you can understand that sunlight plays a very important role, because we're still trying to make you understand why certain black people come out light skin and some have darker skin, because it is something that a lot of people will always try to figure out, and we're going to give you answers in this particular video. Now, so I'm reading from this particular website. It's a book. You just have to get on your search engine and just type out melatonin from molecules to therapy, and you see it. The text here is going to be very, very small, because every time I try to increase it, I think it goes out of focus. But let me see if I can do that. It goes out of focus and I have to like swivel around. But let me read it all the same and you guys can see it. It says, individuals of the black race received lower daily illumination exposure than did white volunteers. So naturally, blacks nowadays tend to stay out of the sun because they are afraid of the myth of white supremacy, which says they're going to get darker. They want to have lighter skin so that you know, they can maybe have good jobs or be much more embraced into the white fake fabricated community. All right, the albanic community. So let's keep on reading. So that's what this book is trying to show you, that they receive less illumination. But I want you to see what happens even with that. It says now, this might not be a consequence of less time spent outdoors, as white and black participants reported spending comparable time in daylight outdoors. No specific data were available to suggest differently. Let me reduce this so I can just read it at once. Sorry about that. Okay, so it says here, where did I stop? Okay, no specific data were available to suggest differences in home artificial lighting conditions. Although in graphic summary it appears that average nocturnal illumination, means nighttime illumination levels among blacks, were somehow greater than for their white counterparts. So that means even in darkness, the black bodies or black people were getting more illumination because of the melanin. So even in darkness, black people were absorbing light much more. Let's keep on reading. It says, let's keep on reading. One could argue, however, that these light levels were probably too low to have a suppressing effect on melatonin excretion among blacks, which tended to be greater than that of whites. So even with under those dim sunlight conditions, black people were excreting more melanin than white people. What's the reason for this? Why is it that under the same sunlight conditions, one person is producing more melanin and the other is not? Why is that? Because the genetic information when the eggs meet the sperm on how you can produce or digest protein to get more melanin from has been deprecated. That's what happened. Stick around, we're going to explain this much more. So let's keep on reading. It says, UCSD researchers have observed similar race effects on illumination levels, although illumination recordings were performed at different latitudes. They found that postmenopausal black women experience lower ambient illumination compared to age-matched white women. White women here means anybody that has straight hair, because the albinic elite do understand, the albino elite in the world understand that we are only one people in the world. It's a black human race, and some are just albinos or blacks. It's that simple. So as you can see right here, it's talking about that black people experience lower ambient illumination. Lower ambient means that it means like encompassing. Ambient just means that it's surrounding you more. All right, that even though they were black and white were in the same room, they experienced the illumination of the light much more than white folk, and therefore they create more melanin. So what do you think is the reason why some black people have light skin and some have darker skin? Here is the reason why. When the eggs of a black woman and the and the sperm of a black man are exposed to less sunlight, At the time of fertilization, the encoding right there, because of the lack of exposure to sunlight, which we all need, is going to make someone's skin come out darker or lighter. All right? So if the eggs and sperm gets exposed to more sunlight before fertilization, the person will come out having darker skin. If the eggs and sperm are exposed to less sunlight illumination, all right, the person is going to come out having lighter skin. But regardless, black people have the genetic encoding to create more melanin as long as they get exposed to sunlight. So that's the reason why some black people have lighter skin and some have darker skin. That means during the time your mom and your dad were procreating, one or the other was either exposed to less sunlight or the other was exposed to greater sunlight, and you come out having lighter skin or darker skin. This is when albinism is not the problem here. That means you don't have either the black mom or the black dad don't have any traits of albinism. So exposure to sunlight determines the color of the skin that the child gets born with. Now, after this, after the child has the egg and the sperm have fertilized, right, and the genetic encoding for the type of skin the child is born with comes into play. During the formal stages or the formation time of the embryo, if the pregnant mother is not exposed to enough sunlight, other things are going to happen to that baby. One of the things that's going to happen is like there is going to be an imbalance in the hormonal level because she's not exposing herself to enough sunlight. Her melanin, the pineal gland, is not going to be excreting enough hormones. So there's going to be an imbalance with that black baby that's being born. So exposure to sunlight is very, very important. It's a very crucial stage in a child's development stages. If that child is going to come out right, all right, not having any problems, not any genetic defects, the mom has to stay out in sunlight long enough during her pregnancy time. So this is the time in life that's the crucial point in which a child is going to be born and is going to have no genetic defects. This is all exclusive of diseases and vaccinations. The child or the pregnant mom has to stay out in the sunlight long enough for her to have enough melanin, because the longer you stare in the sun, your body gets more efficient at digesting the protein and creating more melanin. As we can see that when we stay out in the sun, we get darker because the sunlight helps to activate more melanin. So that's what usually happens. So if a child comes out light skin, all right, or darker skin, is all dependent on the exposure to sunlight. Now, like I've said before, after this particular point in time, after the genetic coding has been determined on the color of the skin that the child comes in, if the mom does not stay longer in sunlight during her pregnancy time, the child will have an imbalance, all right, of hormones. So for example, the best way to explain this is this. Black people naturally have more testosterone for males and more estrogen from females than anybody else that's not black. That means you don't have woolly hair. Okay? So what happens is during the pregnancy time that the mom goes through, if the mom doesn't stay out in sunlight, she's not going to have enough melanin activated which is responsible for all the physiological process of that child growing and developing, and the child is going to have an imbalanced hormonal level. So this is what happens. So the child gets born, and you notice that with some black males, they store up more protein in their body, they store up more fat in their body because the estrogen levels are slightly higher than they should be. So they're not as masculine and as lean as they should be, which is something that is most accustomed to black males. Now, with some females, this will also happen and be the case. Black women are naturally curvy, all right? But if your mom did not stay out in the sunlight long enough, you'll come out looking more masculine because there's an imbalance of a higher testosterone level than the estrogen necessary in the female body, so that the testosterone and the estrogen are playing a balance. So the woman comes out, the child comes out curvy and has a butt. And some other black women will come out, they'll not look so curvy, but they'll rather be more masculine because there's an imbalance in the hormones that were secreted during the pregnancy stage of that child's mother because she did not stay out enough in the sunlight. Does it make sense? So let's keep on reading some other stuff into this so you guys can understand where we're going. So a study was made on how melanin affects everything. We've showed you from point A to point B that the way you are, the ability to do what you do is responsible on how much melanin you have in the body, and that melanin is activated more by sunlight. The more exposure you get to sunlight, the more activation you get of melanin in your body that helps you to function much more properly. So that's why some black people will be better athletes than other black people because they got exposed to more melanin from the time of conception till they were born. That's why melanin is very, very important. It's responsible for everything. But since we're living in a system of, albinic supremacy, they don't want to let you know that because the white albino elite need their populations for them to be in power. If they are told the truth that the lack of melanin is responsible for much more, some of the crazier behaviors that you have, then a lot of people will want to go back into the population of humanity by getting married and procreating more with black people. So that's why this racism is needed for the survival of the albinic elite in power who lead from the Vatican, the great-grandsons of Genghis Khan. So melanin is responsible for making black people to be able to do things better than, people who don't have it or people who have straight hair. All right? Is the reason why black women look the way they are. So, for example, a black woman is the only woman in the world who's going to have a butt. Now, why do black women have a butt? It's because black women have more muscle mass. Why do black women have more muscle mass? It's because they have more testosterone in their bodies. Testosterone is responsible for your muscle mass. And why do black women have more testosterone? Because they secrete more melanin in their body. So a study was done here. You can pause the video at any point in time and copy out this link and go read up on yourself. A study was done here on the direct relation between melanin, which they call melatonin, because they don't want you to understand that it's one and the same thing, melanin inside your body, all right? On the relationship between melatonin and your hormones, all right? So one thing you have to understand about hormones in the woman body is this. It's estrogen, elevated levels of estrogen that make you female. So estrogen is never the problem with females. The more estrogen you have as a woman, the more curvier you become. we're sorry that we had to stop the video on the Myth of Whiteness, part number 16, Intelligence, the part one of it. Um, the video itself took about up to close to, like I say, almost 5 hours to make. It also took a lifetime to gather all that information. And it took about 1 week and a couple of days with the team to make sure that we pulled all the necessary resources from all the information that we had to make that video. So for any person who fast forwarded that video to this transgender part section of our feature presentation, we just want you to know that if you did fast forward without listening to any of those things that we said, we want to make you understand and know for certain that you are a fool. You are part of the reason contributing to the way society is today and not doing anything at all to help it, because you're only focused on the transgender part. Knowing about transgenders, who they are, is not going to change the price of tea in the market. Knowing who transgenders are is not going to stop your son or daughter for being indoctrinated in the school system of white supremacy, which is actually abstract and is also killing them at the same time. Knowing who transgenders are will not change the enslavement that's being enslaved upon us each and every day. Knowing who the transgenders are will not change the fact that a mother or father will have to work 2 jobs and take the whole entire day working on that job and won't have enough time to spend with his family. Neither will they have any savings left for them. So if you did fast forward that video, after all the times and work that we've put to put all that information together for you so you can have some truth left in your world, and you fast forward it to this point, we want you to know that you're the biggest fool there is. And if we find you on this channel leaving any comments just on the transgender part of this video, you're going to get blocked and spammed for wasting our time and contributing to the enslavement of society. But if you did not do that, and you sat down and watched all what we talked about, and you learned something for the whole entire video, we want to thank you. We want to thank you so much from the bottom of our heart for contributing to truth, for standing for truth, for listening to truth, for having some value put into your life and some value that you can give to others who are being killed daily, on a daily basis. And some of the children, like we're talking about here today in Elton John that we're featuring, taken from childhood, and their lives have been wasted away so that they can be turned into products to keep on controlling society. All for who? For the Vatican, for the great-grandsons of Genghis Khan, who have no interest in anything humanity has to offer except what the devil has told them to do. So we want to thank you for watching all that. And we also want to thank you that you'll continue watching the part 2 on the next video that's coming out after this one. We're releasing everything together so you can have it all in one piece. We want to thank you all for being great subscribers and contributing to truth and having hope for humanity. Thank you. So, our feature presentation today is Elton John. A lot of you guys have heard about Elton John. You can get on any search engine and type out Elton John and read about his official stats. But I just want to show you a few things about Elton John here. Now, his page is littered with the Vatican Code of Numbers. It says here that Elton John was born Sir Elton Hercules John, born Reginald Kenneth Dwight. So his name wasn't even Elton John, as you can see right here. He was born Reginald Kenneth Dwight on the 25th of March, 1947. A lot of people may not have known that. Now, some of the things that you'll notice on this particular page about his, Vatican Code of Numbers is that it says here that he has worked with lyricist Bernie Taupin as his song-writing partner since 1967. They have collaborated on more than 30 albums to date. In his 5-decade career, Elton John has sold more than 300 million records. See that? 30 albums, 300 million, 3, the highest degree in Freemasonry. Um, if you want to read about it, you can continue reading. Because there's so much of it. Like he says here, he has sold over 33 million copies worldwide and is the best-selling single in the history of the United Kingdom and United States singles charts. One other thing I would just want to point to you about Elton John, because we'll continue the full transvestigation of Elton John in the next video. We just wanted to give you a sneak peek on this one because this is the end of the part 1 of the Myth of Whiteness, part 16 underscore intelligence. So what I want you to take notice of here is that this is how the Vatican creates people to use in telling us fake history, fabricated and abstract history, which they've constructed to control our mindset. It says here that Elton John has been heavily involved in the fight against AIDS, and AIDS is a fabrication which doesn't exist. It's only meant to target black people, because AIDS is the only disease in the world which has no pathogen. If you have a disease, let's say, or you're sick from something, there's always a pathogen, meaning there is a virus or let's say a bacteria that's worrying you. With AIDS, is the only disease in the world that has no pathogen. The indication that you have AIDS is only shown if you have an elevated level of antibodies in your system. That's all what it is. So for example, if a pregnant mom goes to have a HIV test, she's going to come back positive because the test is for antibodies, not a test for pathogen. All right. So you can see how these people fabricate all these crazy things just to make sure that they can slow down, all right, the breeding out of albinism by black people, especially Africans, because AIDS targets African people, and that's just fact. For more of this information about what AIDS is, get on the Tricks of the S-Trade channel and look for the video on the Palestinian leader, sorry to say, called Yasser Arafat. There's a playlist for it, and also on this particular channel, you can look for the video on Michael, Magic Johnson's son or daughter, and you have some more information on all of that. So with that said, we've come to the end of part number 1 of the Myth of Whiteness, part number 16 underscore intelligence. And you can pick up the continuing part still on this channel or any other available media. And we want to thank you for sticking around with us. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys.